Okay, as you can see, we're doing a little bit of pet testing here today. So we're going to talk about which pets are good, what sort of builds you should run with the pet, and just kind of my general thoughts on running pets on Ascension. So I'm testing these on Alar because it's hard to make an even scenario on Area 52 because of the random spells, but I am going to be talking about this through the lens of Area 52 viability. Now this character I have here that I'm using the test on, really bad item level, a lot of Bloodforged PvP gear, so a lot of it's like level 60 gear, but because of my talents and that my cat form, my double Rockbiter, Titan's Grip, he's got 3,155 power, which is something around what a person running a more normal build with some gear would have on him. So anyway, so first want to touch on if you should even have a pet. So their DPS is really, if you're not totally speccing into them, which you probably don't want to do that, their DPS is really nothing special. This guy's doing about 1.1k, and I've got him every buffed, Titan's Grip cat form, Rockbiter. So not really the best. He's also got the enchant Mystic Companion. Just a little bit about this is it says deals 30% less damage, but because this makes them ignore armor, they end up doing quite a bit more. I think this increased his DPS by about 25% on this dummy, which on a boss with higher resistances, that number would with higher armor, that number would be even more significant. So something to keep in mind there. I think the arcane version is the best. It doesn't really matter too much. Just not many monsters are immune to arcane. So I run that. I think Shadow is the worst. There's quite a few things immune to Shadow who have a Shadow resistance. Also in PvP, there's Prayer of Shadow Protection that people often have on them, which, kind of makes Shadow a little bit worse than the rest. But it's really not a big deal. You can run whatever you think looks good. But I think if you're min-maxing, this Arcane one is probably the pick. Anyway. So should you run one of these pets? Well, it really depends on what kind of build you're running. If your build can afford to start with just one spell, because picking the pet takes 3 of your spells, then the pet's okay. A lot of melee builds, for example, revolve around common spells, and maybe your only really good level 1 option is Charge, so you can just pick Charge in the pet, and you're not really losing too much. Because, you're going to get your commons later, so don't worry too much about your commons. Because, you will be able to pick those up while leveling, assuming you don't get disgustingly unlucky. But now if your build needs, some of the level 1 rares, or, more than one epic or something from level 1, then I would stray away from using the pet. It's just too much luck involved. The pet is not such an amazing boost that it's worth breaking your build over. But anyway, if you really are set on running a pet and you want to have the best pet that you can, I'm going to talk about a few things with them. So first, they scale with the demon, the undead, and the dragons scale with whatever your highest scaling is. And this is really important because it makes strength-based builds a little bit better for these pets, because strength turns into AD much better than agility turns into attack power, or intellect turns into spell power. Now, as you get higher gear levels, intellect is able to catch up a little bit, but in general, strength-based characters are going to have the most stats, with the exception being cat and bear form and agility, and we're going to go into some of those exceptions in a minute. But anyway, strength's generally the best for these pets. Warlock demons, like your classic Warlock demons, your Imp, your Fell Hunter, your Succubus, Felguard, Voidwalker, those only scale with your spell power, because those are from Warlocks. So if you want to run one of those, you pretty much have to be an intellect build. So aside from those, and the Hunter pets. Those are very important. The Hunter pets really only scale well with agility, because Hunter pets mostly scale from ranged attack power, and the only place to get ranged attack power is from your agility stat. So keep that in mind when you're picking your pet. Like, you know, when you're picking what kind of pet to run. In general, I think the dragons are the worst of all the pets. Their scaling's really bad. A lot of them have spells that are not worth casting. I think they need a fair bit of work before they're in line with the rest. But I imagine when things are all said and done, the dragons are going to be about as good as the others. For single target DPS, with, you know, moderate investment, I think the undead are the best. This Quillbore that I have here, Undead Quillbore, you can find these in Razorfin Downs. It, in my opinion, is the highest DPS pet from what I've seen. The Skeleton, who is very similar, it also has this strike attack, which this strike is the reason it's so good, because it just spams this, and it's almost like a second auto. And it, you know, just gives it quite good DPS compared to the other pets. It's very good, but the reason I rank it above the Skeleton is it's got this Frenzy, which raises its DPS a little bit compared to the Skeleton, which has a defensive there instead. So I believe this Quillbore is the best pet. If someone, you know, I've tested them all. If someone has different findings than me, please let me know, and we can talk about it, and I will go tame that pet and test it again. The Banshee also does pretty good single target DPS, although it runs out of mana. So if you're not, you know, you don't have something in your build that's feeding it mana, it's gonna run out of mana. And a little funny little thing with the Banshee is if you micromanage it to where it's in melee and then starts casting its spells, it will do an attack after each spell, which ends up making its DPS quite high. But that's kind of that's a bit of managing to do that. The boss is moving around a lot. It's just not going to be possible. But the Banshee, another very good option. Disable its anti-magic shell spell, so it's not spamming that on people. And it will do quite good DPS, assuming you can keep its mana up. Like with Sinister Transfusion, will give it the mana that it needs if you're running that. But aside from that, this guy, very good. The demons do a bit better AoE. Oh, if you want an AoE undead pet, the Lich. The Lich is quite nice. He is the highest from what I've seen. The Abomination, I think, has some AoE as well, and it's pretty good. Abomination's a pretty good pet in general, but I believe the Lich has the highest AoE damage of the undeads. But the demons do AoE a little bit better. I like the Pit Lord a lot. Pit Lord's kind of difficult to tame. You might need someone to help you. They hit very hard. But the Pit Lords, I like them. Their AoE DPS is pretty good. You need to feed it mana, though. Otherwise, its DPS will end up being quite bad. So the Pit Lord, if you're able to feed it mana, good AoE DPS pet. The... oh, gosh, what's he called? He's like a... I don't know the names of these. The Felguard, light guys, Wrathguard, I think. The Wrathguard, the dual wielders, they use energy, so they won't run out of mana, and their DPS is quite nice. Probably one of your better general picks. The Terror Fiend as well is pretty good. It reduces their magic resist, which stacks with Curse of the Elements. It's hard to really say how much damage this is giving the caster, though. But it does work with these elemental companion things, even though these elemental companions say hunter pet only, but it's not. It applies to everything except for the classic warlock demons. So if you give the Terror Fiend this, it will boost its own DPS with its magic shred. So he's a pretty good pet too. The Observer is fully ranged, and his DPS is actually okay. I run him on my Arcane Gunslinger because I picked pet on Arcane Gunslinger. That was an okay decision, but now that I know a little bit more about it, I probably wouldn't do that again. Just a word to the wise, but I kind of like the Observer for that. He's just totally ranged, and his ranged DPS is pretty good, unlike most of the other ranged pets who are just better off just meleeing. And then, like I said, the dragons, I did another video on them, but I don't think they're really too good right now, but I'm sure Ascension is going to get to fixing that. Okay, so now as for builds that really synergize with these pets, you know, if you want to run a pet build. So first let's talk about Demonic Influence. That is the Metamorphosis legendary enchant, and what it will do is increase your summoned demons' damage by 100%, as well as return mana to them. This also works with enslaved demons, so if you're running like the Felguard, his AoE DPS can get quite high. And you can just, you just run Demonic Influence, and then you play like an Emoliate Conflag, Chaos Bolt type build next to it, or you can run Affliction Warlock, but I think the I think without Shadow Form, the Affliction build is just not as good, and I think the Chaos Bolt build can function perfectly fine without a legendary enchant or any kind of form. So I like the Demonic Influence plus the Chaos Bolt build. You'll have a very beefed up pet. The Warlock Felguard Summon is actually the best pet for that, unfortunately, though. But the Pit Lord was close, and on AoE, the Pit Lord is ahead. So that's something to keep in mind if you're interested in messing with that. Really not bad at all, and also extremely easy to play if you are not very good at the game. You know, it's a pretty simple build. The pet is taking care of a lot of the work for you. So, you know, really pretty good option. Mana Fiend is another one that will make your pets do quite high damage because it's turning so much intellect into spell power. So you have like these moments where you've got very high spell power, which transfers to your pet's power stat and makes it do really quite high DPS. So that's one to consider. Any build with cat form builds end up having a huge amount of attack power, which converts to a lot of power for your pet. So cat form pets in general do very good damage, and they also have a epic enchant that makes Berserk increase the damage of your hunter pet, but only works with the hunter pets. So if you want to run a hunter pet with a cat, it's pretty decent. Probably the best thing a cat can pick up at level 1, since you know you can't get cat form spells at that level. So what I would pick up is a pet plus charge, or a pet plus Blessing of Might, if you're maybe getting a mobility spell from a skill card or something. Yeah, Blessing of Might's another really good pickup for all these pets, by the way, because Might on yourself and Might on your pet, it'll double dip. Same with Aspect of the Beast, it'll double dip. And any kind of aura that your pets can use will be double dipping for you and the pet. So things to consider when making your pet build. But so yeah, cat, very good. Bear. The bear specs also get increased attack power compared to normal builds, so they end up doing quite a bit of damage compared to what the other build pets are able to do, except for cat converts into attack power a little bit better than bear does, but still bear, you can be a tank and have a pet that's doing a pretty decent amount of damage. So bear is something to consider. Titan's Grip, because Titan's Grip has bonus stats, you know, it's got two two-handed weapons, which have more stats than having two one-handed weapons, of course. And it can double dip with the Rock Biter, because Rock Biter gives double attack power if you are using two-handed weapons, which even works with Titan's Grip. So it gets a huge amount of attack power, making your pet have really high power, which in turn makes it do better damage than what regular builds are running. There's Beast and Blade, which Beast and Blade works with all the pets, but the stuff like that you get from like using dispatch and combo points and stuff, and the energy return when the pet uses special abilities, none of that works with anything other than hunter pets as of this recording. So you really don't want to try running that build. You know, you're kind of wasting your legendary enchant if you're using that with like an undead or something. So, but if you want to run a pet build, Beast and Blade will have the strongest pet that's possible in the game. Hunter pets are very strong if you spend a ton of talent points on them. They've got a lot more talent points than any other pet options have. So if you want to invest really hard into them, they end up being pretty stacked. And Beast and Blade is pretty good. It's also a very easy build to play, and it's not really a hard build to get the skill cards for either. It doesn't need a lot of skill cards like some of the other builds do. Because Kill Command is good, but it's not mandatory. So you're really just needing Bestial Wrath, which if you don't pick a legendary, your odds of getting it are pretty decent. And so you just need that and pet, and then like Hemo and Dispatch and Eviscerate or something, which are all pretty easy to pick up while leveling. So Beast and Blade, really good build. Very easy to play and a very strong pet. In general, specs that use rogue moves because of Sinister Transfusion really help these guys out. I think Hoplite is a very good build for this because Hoplite has a two-handed weapon and a shield, which gives it higher stats than other builds just off of that. But it also spams a rogue move, which will work for Sinister Transfusion, and it doesn't have a lot of great epic enchant options anyway, so it's not giving up anything too important to run that. So I really like Hoplite with a pet. I think Hoplite with a pet is quite nice. And Hoplite also has a lot of free talent points because it just stacks a lot of attack power. You know, it gets some stuff for Sinister Strike and Shield Slam, and that just stacks attack power. And that synergizes very well with your pets. So it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice for your pets. But really, when you're running your pet, like when you're running pets, if you know that your build is going to use a lot of talent points on, like if you know your build is going to use a lot of talent points on things like increasing your frost spell damage or something, that's not going to translate to your pet. Whereas if you're running a build that is picking up a lot of like increases your strength by 5% or increases, you know, your intellect by some percent or something, if you're running a lot of stuff like that, that is going to benefit your pet. So builds that are able to pick up lots of that are just going to have pets that are better. So that's something to consider too. If you are thinking about whether or not you should be picking a pet. Yeah, there's really not too much to say about them. I don't think they are really amazing. If your build can afford them, they are good. Some of the builds I mentioned will benefit from running them. But in general, pets, they're just okay. They're just okay. For PvP, they do like 90% reduced damage. So if you're running your build around pets, especially the undead, the demons, and the dragons, they've got the most brutal multiplier on them of them all. They do like 90 or 95% less or something crazy. It's really terrible. Like this guy in the background you see like hitting these pretty high numbers. I dueled someone that had, you know, pretty much no PvP gear on, and he was hitting them for like 90. It's, you know, pretty pathetic. So if you're focused on PvP, then these pets are you're gonna get a little less mileage out of them. They also get just targeted down really fast, so you might not want them for PvP. Anyway, if you've got any questions about pets or some possible builds, or you want some links to some builds, I'm going to be doing some of that. But if you're having trouble with a build or have some questions about it, you can just drop them in the comments below. And if there's something you really like me to make a video about, let me know, and I will do some researching and, you know, try and get some actual guides out for this community. So anyway, aside from that, thank you for watching.